Hello and welcome to Better Body Movement. This class is designed to help you start feeling well.
I have less pain, literally eliminate that pain.
I just feel better.
I can tell that my posture is changing.
Bright light in the day when we've done our workouts online.
Makes me feel so good about myself.
Carpal tunnel syndrome commonly is caused by forearm muscles that get overly tight and create compression on your carpals. We will start by working through the extensor digitorum, the extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis, and extensor carpi ulnaris. Start with a lacrosse ball on the upper part of the forearm. You'll notice when you make a fist and squeeze the knuckles up, the muscles will tighten in the upper part of the forearm near the elbow. Press down with the lacrosse ball and flex the wrist. Release the pressure on the lacrosse ball, returning the wrist to extension or knuckles up. Repeat this process multiple times over the top side of the forearm in the extensors of the wrist. Do this at a brisk pace. An additional way to work this muscle tissue is by using your own forearm. Locate the flexors of the wrist by squeezing the knuckles up. Lay your arm across your knees and press your elbow into the tissue. Repeat, knuckles up, pressure on, knuckles down, pressure off. Continue this process through the muscle on the top of the forearm. The next group of muscle tissue that creates more pressure on the carpals as well is on the inside of the forearm. These are called the flexor carpi radialis and ulnaris and palmaris longus. Using a technique like the extensors, start with an open palm flexing your fingers towards the elbow as far as you can. After you put pressure down on the muscle tissue, using your opposite elbow, open your hand pointing your fingers to the floor as far as you possibly can. Lift the pressure, flex the wrist, bringing the fingers to the starting position. Continue this process for roughly 30 seconds in multiple spots, working briskly. The next area to focus on is the retinaculum. This is a ligamentous band around the wrist that keeps the tendons close to the bone. Oftentimes, the tendons underneath the retinaculum get adhered and make it very painful within the carpals themselves. Focusing on the retinaculum, glide the thumb up and down the entire band, spanning from the mid-wrist all the way into the base of the hand. Work vigorously with firm pressure for 30 seconds in order to break adhesions that lie deep within the carpals. Now it's time to perform a joint mobilization. You can see there are several bones that make up the carpal area of the wrist. We want to simply restore some range of motion to the carpals. Using your opposite hand, create a tight squeeze around the wrist and drag the hand away from the elbow as you hold the wrist. Begin to rotate the wrist in a big circle. Continue mobilizing the wrist for 30 seconds. Now we're going to create a stretch that's going to help the nerves communicate with the wrist. Sitting in a chair, press the shoulder down towards the floor. Rotate the thumb and wrist backwards, then flex the wrist and fingers up to the ceiling. Create a neural glide by looking down and away from that arm. Continue to perform this stretch 30 to 60 seconds. To begin working the muscles that are most affected by de Quervain's, hold your hand with your thumb straight up in the air. Then locate the tendon that is most superficial or on top of the wrist. This tendon will be controlled by a muscle that runs up the arm towards the elbow. I want you to contract the muscle tissue by flexing your wrist up and down while you press into the muscle tissue with your thumb. If this is too difficult to use your thumb, grab a lacrosse ball and place pressure directly onto the forearm using the palm of your hand. Remember to create this contraction 7 to 10 times, pressing straight into the muscle tissue near the elbow. Next, we are going to run pressure from the wrist up the forearm towards the elbow, creating a firm pressure, driving up and stretching the tissue. Again, we can use the lacrosse ball and just roll up the arm, creating a release of that tissue. Carpal tunnel syndrome commonly is caused by forearm muscles that get overly tight and create compression on your carpals. We will start by working through the extensor digitorum, the extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis, and extensor carpi ulnaris. Start with a lacrosse ball on the upper part of the forearm. You'll notice when you make a fist and squeeze the knuckles up, the muscles will tighten in the upper part of the forearm near the elbow. Press down with the lacrosse ball and flex the wrist. Release the pressure on the lacrosse ball, returning the wrist to extension or knuckles up. Repeat this process multiple times over the top side of the forearm in the extensors of the wrist. Do this at a brisk pace. An additional way to work this muscle tissue is by using your own forearm. Locate the flexors of the wrist by squeezing the knuckles up. Lay your arm across your knees and press your elbow into the tissue. Repeat, knuckles up, pressure on, knuckles down, pressure off. Continue this process through the muscle on the top of the forearm. The next group of muscle tissue that creates more pressure on the carpals as well is on the inside of the forearm. These are called the flexor carpi radialis and ulnaris and palmaris longus. Using a technique like the extensors, start with an open palm flexing your fingers towards the elbow as far as you can. After you put pressure down on the muscle tissue, using your opposite elbow, open your hand, pointing your fingers to the floor as far as you possibly can. Lift the pressure, flex the wrist, bringing the fingers to the starting position. Continue this process for roughly 30 seconds in multiple spots, working briskly. The next area to focus on is the retinaculum. This is a ligamentous band around the wrist that keeps the tendons close to the bone. Oftentimes, the tendons underneath the retinaculum get adhered and make it very painful within the carpals themselves. Focusing on the retinaculum, glide the thumb up and down the entire band, spanning from the mid-wrist all the way into the base of the hand. Work vigorously with firm pressure for 30 seconds in order to break adhesions that lie deep within the carpals. Now it's time to perform a joint mobilization. You can see there are several bones that make up the carpal area of the wrist. We want to simply restore some range of motion to the carpals. Using your opposite hand, create a tight squeeze around the wrist and drag the hand away from the elbow as you hold the wrist. Begin to rotate the wrist in a big circle. Continue mobilizing the wrist for 30 seconds. Now we're going to create a stretch that's going to help the nerves communicate with the wrist. Sitting in a chair, press the shoulder down towards the floor. Rotate the thumb and wrist backwards, then flex the wrist and fingers up to the ceiling. Create a neural glide by looking down and away from that arm. Continue to perform this stretch 30 to 60 seconds. To begin working the muscles that are most affected by de Quervain's, hold your hand with your thumb straight up in the air. Then locate the tendon that is most superficial or on top of the wrist. This tendon will be controlled by a muscle that runs up the arm towards the elbow. I want you to contract the muscle tissue by flexing your wrist up and down while you press into the muscle tissue with your thumb. If this is too difficult, to use your thumb, grab a lacrosse ball and place pressure directly onto the forearm using the palm of your hand. Remember to create this contraction 7 to 10 times, pressing straight into the muscle tissue near the elbow. Next, we are going to run pressure from the wrist up the forearm towards the elbow, creating a firm pressure, driving up and stretching the tissue. Again, we can use the lacrosse ball and just roll up the arm, creating a release of that tissue.
Good, great, glorious morning to you. Here we've got some nice sunshine that we've been needing. I saw the frost melting off of houses. Always nice when that starts to happen and the sun warms up a little bit. So good to have that. I hope that you guys are ready to go for an absolutely fantastic workout. We have our total body workout, so it's a little quicker because we only have 6 exercises, right? But they are total body movements, upper and lower, simultaneously moving, really forcing your brain to fire, connecting all of the tissue to see how well we can move through those movements. So remember, if you have questions before we get going, make sure you ask them. I absolutely would love to help you out. We can tailor some of the exercises, so maybe a movement just is not going to work for you. That's okay. Let me know. I can show you some adjustments that you can make in order to make this work well for you, right? So if it's not working well, we need to create a change. I don't know what change that is unless you let me know what you're struggling with, and then I can give you those changes, okay? Every single day we go through our I dedicates listed over on this side, so please remember those as we go. Those names will also be listed across the top when we transition into our workout. So maybe in the midway, on the breaks especially, familiarize yourself with those names and be praying for them as we go. I know we do a lot of thinking about our movements, but if nothing else, dedicate this time. Every action that you take, every movement you make is dedicated to the individuals that we want to be praying for through our day. Okay? Our verse of the day, absolutely wonderful. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. James 1:3. I always look for, my brain has a tendency to look for parallels when we have scripture like this talking about our spiritual lives and our soul and what we do, but I also see physical parallels that go through this, right? So the testing of your body produces steadfastness, right? So when we test ourselves, when we push ourselves, when we do things that are uncomfortable, with more time, it becomes more of a habit. It's a lot easier, right? It's easier to show up now than it was years ago when you first started, because now it's just a habit, right? It's something that we do. So when we put our bodies through the test and we over and over prove that we're getting better and better through it, we are stronger, right? So what do I always say? What do I always say? Challenge brings change, right? So when we're challenged, it's going to bring some kind of change. So that's what we want to provide for you here. That's why we do this on YouTube for you guys, so that way you can just jump on and get to work and start seeing that change over a long period of time. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the workout because it's awesome. These are some of the tools that you're going to need if you're following along with a certain person. Fantastic, follow along, that's no problem. If you want to switch up, maybe one exercise you need in the beginner category, and the next exercise you might be able to do in the intermediate, right? So you get to pick and choose, switch back and forth between what you want to do, and that's just fine. We'll start with these warm-ups, get those shoulders up and running. Very good. And now could be a good time to also subscribe to our channel. If you're new here, if you're just jumping on and you're seeing us for the first time, we are doing this on a daily basis, Monday through Friday, to help you build your body towards better body movement. And so what we want to do is encourage you to subscribe to the channel so that way when you come back onto YouTube, you can hit your subscriptions. This will pop right up for you, so that way every time we put a new video out, you can go through it and do the training on your own, okay? Okay, good internal, external rotation.
Yeah, perfect.
That's why we have it on a swivel. Had the YFC Comedy Cafe last night.
How'd that go?
Pretty good. I thought he was funny.
I thought he was hilarious. Langdon was telling me before too. He's like, I heard the guy's not very funny. Made my expectations super low.
Yeah,
But
like
he was hilarious.
mine were too, but I thought he was really funny. Man, so he had a really funny joke that ended up not being funny, but then he just made a big joke about the fact that we made it a joke. Then he goes, my daughter, she's a teenager and she started doing this, as she's talking. And I'm like, I don't care what she said. Like, she'd be like, Dad, we made you breakfast in bed. And I'll be like, no, that's disrespectful. Go to your room. And he's like, she's always like got this thing with her hip and her hands moving. And then he goes, yeah, well, we found out actually it's called scoliosis. So she actually has like a 60-degree turn. And then everyone's laughing and goes, so now you're laughing at my daughter with her medical conditions? Oh my goodness, it was funny. So then he, kind of used that and referenced it throughout his joke. But man, it was good. I thought it was.
It's hard not to be offensive to somebody, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But it was funny. And so really early on, every comedian kind of has something that they circle back to throughout their set. And so he talked about the fact that for 10 years he was coach and he was a teacher at a Christian academy. And he said, the great thing about being a teacher at the Christian academy, anytime something awkward happens or, you're in the middle of yelling at kids and the principal comes walking through the door and says, hey, what's going on here? You just go, let's pray. So then he had a couple jokes that, he knew the crowd would be like almost eked out. So then as soon as he did that and he didn't get a response, he'd go, let's pray. So then it took you back to, I thought he did really well. The skit was really well put together. He engaged the crowd. I mean, it was good. It was really good. So that was a fun night. We had over 500 people show up to the YFC event.
Wow.
And the absolutely awesome thing is, it was for Clear Lake. They did the Comedy Cafe for Mason City 2 nights earlier in the week.
3.
So this was just Clear Lake. We had
1.
500 people
Get
from our
ready for
community show
Roast
up and
Live.
say it's important enough to us to learn about what YFC does for these kids and how we can bring Jesus into the lives of these kids. So I'm really hoping that we can see some
3,
boost in
2,
our
1.
volunteer
Most
power
lots.
force for people who would have, just like 1 hour a week to sit down with kids, talk to them, enjoy the conversation, mentor them a little bit, and then be available for phone conversations. That's really what we need, is people that they can just call on when they're frustrated and upset and life is just hard for them. But yeah,
just to get
really
more
cool.
kids interested in it.
That's
too.
halfway.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear that was the thing to do last night?
Yeah, really fun. All right, but enough of that. Marsha, good job distracting me. I didn't get to yell at everyone right away. Shoulders down and back, core compressed, glutes on, right? If you work
3,
with us throughout the
2,
week,
1.
you learn all
Transition
of
to
these
chest
things,
press
right?
lunge.
So when we go through our weekly routines, we've got a core day, an upper body day, a lower body day, core routine, and then we're doing our total body day. So if you're jumping on today, it might
3,
feel really overwhelming.
2, 1. Chest press lunge.
That's just fine. But if you do join in and you go back and you look at the weekly routine, It's all to reinforce Monday how our core operates and works. Tuesday, how our shoulder blades operate and work while our core is tight. Then Wednesday, when we do leg day,
That's
it's how does
halfway.
our core and shoulders work while we use our hips and our legs and force that movement. Then we go to Thursday, and it's another core day where we reiterate, okay, this is how important the core is. And then Friday is just putting all of that together in movement, right? Compound movements, we do that all day long. So we want to make those as good as we possibly can for your week.
1. Transition to hammer curl good mornings.
Because we got 178 hours in the week. So you show up and you work out with me 5 hours a week.
3,
That's fantastic.
2, 1. Hammer curl good mornings.
But then you got 173 hours to screw up everything we do here. Right? So,
No, because some of those I'm sleeping.
well, some of those you're sleeping, obviously. But, every waking minute we have, we want to be training our body into a good posture that helps sustain our bodies and helps them move better for a longer period of time.
That's halfway.
We don't ever change the way that the muscle tissue works and the way that the body's moving. We're going to just slowly slump over and shrink, because gravity continues to win. So we want to build the muscle tissue, okay? So good, nice, easy workout. We have 4 rounds, so make sure you do your best through each one of
3,
these exercises.
2, 1. Transition to
Good.
step up overhead press.
All right, step up overhead press. If you want to challenge your balance on this one, that's fine. Go to a step up in balance. Push your hands overhead. That is enough to
3,
already start
2,
making you lose a little
1.
bit of your balance.
Step up overhead press.
Because the brain kind of gets distracted by the movement, right? So if I'm reaching up, that is a bit of a distraction from what's going on here. So I want that core tight, leg tight, butt cheeks, pinching that penny nice and tight, then go through the movement. If you want to add, steps, if you want to add movement to really increase kind of calorie burn or
That's
heart rate,
halfway.
do this on steps, right? 40 seconds on a stair step where we're actually moving. Have some here today. So if I have some steps here and I step and push and switch feet, right? I can
Step on your core.
increase.
3, 2, 1.
Core will survive. I hope.
Transition to tricep press down
But,
step back lunge.
Right, you can increase your capacity, right? So we have to challenge that. Sometimes that's hard to convey through a camera.
3,
However,
2,
you do need to give it your
1.
best if you're going
Tricep
to
press down
see
step back
change.
lunge.
And I'm not assuming your best means you're going really fast, right? Your best is truly thinking about seeing how your body works, understanding what's not working, and how do I get that to fire the way that it should, right? So your best might be really slow movements, just
That's
trying to figure
halfway.
out how do I make that work, right? How do I squeeze my core and my shoulders and my glutes while I'm trying to do a lunge, right? They all matter. It makes a big difference. So be aware of that as you go, okay? Very, very good.
3,
And again, remember,
2, 1. Transition to hamstring curl pull-aparts.
this is our last one of the round, so I just want to preempt you. If you have questions, there's a minute break between rounds. Go ahead and type the question into the comments. I would love to answer those
3,
for you so you can
2,
understand more
1.
of how to
Hamstring
move
curl pull-aparts.
the way that I would want you to move, okay? But good hamstring pulls. Remember, you're bending your knees, so if you happen to be on the ground like Jacob or I, you want to be pressing your feet into the floor, squeezing your butt cheeks tight, but then bending your knees. If you're in the chair like Jenny there, you want to be pulling your heels like you're breaking that foam roller, right? Or think like a recliner, right? You put the
That's
footstool
halfway.
up. You want to pop that footstool down with your heels. This is going to help you be able to do that longer, right? So then eventually we just lose all our hamstring strength, and then we're stuck in our recliner for years because we can't put it down. That's not what we want.
Or
3,
you have an electric.
2,
Or you end up
1.
switching to the electric.
Long rest.
Awesome. All right, very good work. So that was round 1. Typically, round 1 for me is kind of just like a warm-up round. Get prepped and ready for the movements. We'll start talking about form and function through each one of these movements as we continue on. So make sure you get a drink real quick, and then we'll get started right back up. There will be a 3, 2, 1. That is just a notification we're about to start again. So you've got 45 seconds, and then there will be a 3, 2, 1, another 15 seconds to prepare for the exercise, and then we'll get started again, okay?
Three, 2, 1. Get ready for row squats.
All right. Okay, so row squats. Remember, as we lean against wall, or if we're using
3,
bands, especially if we're
2,
attached,
1. Row squats.
if we get attached to our bands to the wall, I want to make sure. So, if you think of my shoulders right here, right, I'm not arching my back and it's rounded, and I'm pulling with those shoulders forward. I want to actually take my shoulders and pull them down and back, so my entire spine is nice and straight.
That's
Then I
halfway.
pull, right? So I want to maintain that spinal position with core compressed, hinge at the hips. That means my butt goes backwards more than it drops right away, right? So push my hips back, then I sit, press through my feet, stand with a straight spine. Right? So we're
3,
training your
2,
spine to stay in
1.
alignment.
Transition to chest press lunge.
So every movement we make, we want to be able to make sure our spine stays in the appropriate alignment. That's where a lot of our compressed discs end up happening, right? So
3, 2,
get into bad
1.
positions.
Chest press lunge.
So again, every movement you make, it's very important. It's imperative for movement to increase your core capacity, right? We want core strength to be so strong that nothing changes here as we go through a movement, whether I'm stepping forward and pushing, or if I'm doing a pull, or I'm doing a lunge. This should be nice
That's
and tight,
halfway.
right? So I'm never going to create a push and arch my back during that push, right? I want to hold this tight, create that push, and my whole body moves, okay? Again, 3 Bs, butt, belly, bra straps. Squeeze each one nice and tight. That's where our good tall
3,
posture comes from.
2, 1. Transition to hammer curl. Good mornings.
Awesome. Okay, hammer curl, good mornings. Remember, get nice and tall before you start. A good morning simply means
3,
I think of
2,
the Asian greeting,
1.
right?
Hammer
So an
curl.
Asian
Good
greeting
mornings.
would be bend at the hips, right? Bend at the hips. We're not bending at the waist, right? You want the butt to actually travel backwards. So if I imagine this being my wall behind me, the edge of my screen, I want to reach my butt all the way back to that, keeping my back nice and flat. I'm not reaching for the
halfway.
floor, right? Yes, I can touch the floor, but not during this movement, not during a loaded phase. It's when we load our spine under compression and create a movement like this that now a bad position plus compression adds the amount of torque or
3,
force that's going
2,
through our spine.
1. Transition to
And guess
step
what that
up
leads to,
overhead
Marcia?
press.
A sore back. You're absolutely right. Oh man, A+ for you today, Marcia. I love it. All right, here we
3,
go.
2, 1.
Remember,
Step
good
up
step
overhead
ups.
press.
Again, if you want to challenge yourself through this, absolutely challenge yourself through it. If you want to work on just balance, go ahead and balance. Whatever you need to work on for yourself to feel that change happening, right? Look for the deficiencies. Are you really imbalanced if you step up onto something? Do you lose balance just with your
That's
arms
halfway.
moving? Maybe all of it feels really good. Your butt, your belly, your bra straps all in place. Hey, knock these out. Start moving a little quicker through them. Okay, very good. Awesome. Very
3,
good.
2, 1. Transition to tricep press down step back lunge.
Awesome. Tricep press down, step back lunge. So again, with these, we want to lock your elbows really tight. And a big one for me is squeeze your arm tight to your
3,
ribs.
2, 1. Tricep press down step back lunge.
You'll be amazed at how much more you can get out of these, right? Instead of being forward here and just going to that position with a band, if we actually squeeze those shoulders back and lock those elbows tight, right, through this movement, you're going to really feel that tricep engage, right? You want to squeeze as hard as
That's
we can.
halfway.
Tight, 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 and then release. Squeeze tight, and then release, okay? Again, good core compression. Firm, right? Think belly whack. You should be prepared to take a hit right to the stomach. We're so kind here.
3, 2, 1.
Good, good, good.
Transition to hamstring curl pull apart.
Hey, all right. Round 2 is almost done already. That's usually fantastic for people. Unless you hate hamstring curls, then I guess it's not so fantastic.
3, 2, 1. Hamstring curl pull apart.
Okay, here we go. Good hamstring curl. So bend those knees. Drive the heels towards your butt. Think like a butt kick. You want to pull as hard as you possibly can. If you are sitting down, let a string be pulling you up to the ceiling, right? Pull your spine nice and long, but still pull those heels, right?
That's
Drive
halfway.
them. Burn, burn, burn. Awesome, awesome, awesome. If you're doing external rotation sitting down, same thing with those shoulders. Always pull them down and back, right? If you're doing straight arm work sitting down, awesome. Still keep those shoulder blades down and back, right? Holding
3,
a good
2,
position.
1. Long rest.
Well, that is just wonderful. Very good work. 2 rounds down, so we'll be halfway here as soon as you hear the hands clap. Just kidding. Remember, if you have any questions, let me know. Love helping you out. That's what I'm here for. Hope you get the most out of this training as possible. Just wants to roll. Hey, that's the official halfway point of our workout.
3,
So we
2,
love that.
1. Get ready for row squats.
Okay, here we go. Again, remember your setup. Before you get going, know what you're doing, right? Butt, belly, bra strap. If you're leaning against the wall and sitting down, you're actively pushing in the
3,
floor and squeezing
2,
those butt cheeks.
1. Row squats.
Okay. If you're actually going through the squat and you have bands that you're able to do this work through, make sure that you compress that core, squeeze your butt cheeks, and press down into the floor. And really a big part for me with squats especially, rip the floor apart, right? You don't want to just be passively
That's
pushing your
halfway.
feet down and thinking head up to the ceiling. You want to be thinking down and out with your feet, right? Pressing away from each other. That's going to engage those external rotators in the hip, so that way they get actually stronger the way that they're supposed to be. Okay, good.
3,
Shoulders down and
2,
back, down and back.
1. Transition to chest press lunge.
Okay, chest press lunge. Rotating around. Remember, with a chest press, we want to think center of the chest. So in order to do that, think elbows popping a beach ball.
3,
Okay?
2, 1. Chest press lunge.
What I don't want is hands like this or elbows like this, right? We're not going to have bent elbows on this one. I want to think drive my elbows toward each other as much as I can. So if you have individual band, go ahead and squeeze here. Okay? If you don't have that, that's fine. But bring
That's
those
halfway.
elbows towards each other, right? We're compressing to the center. So think a beach ball right in front of your chest. You're going to pop that beach ball with your elbows, not your hands. Not hugging a barrel. Elbows driving to your center. And again, shoulders down and back. When we do that, we should not
3,
be rounding
2,
our upper back forward.
1. Transition to hammer curl good mornings.
All right, hammer curl good mornings. Remember, as we go through these, we want the butt to be traveling backwards.
3,
This is a horizontal
2,
movement of the hips.
1. Hammer curl good mornings.
With everything in me, I do not want you to think face to the floor. We're not reaching down. Actually, I would prefer the opposite. Bring the front of your hip as close to the floor as possible while keeping your head away from the floor, right? So right there for me even, I really get a good pull in my hamstrings.
That's halfway.
Right? Everything from here, if I go to reach for the floor, if you watch my hips here, when I go down, nothing in my hips change. right? This is all flexion out of my low back, and that's not what the low back is intended for. It has the capacity, but it's not the intention
3,
of daily
2,
movement.
1. Transition to step up overhead press.
Good. Okay, step up overhead press. Again, your best through it. Pick what you're going to do. Are you going to be actually using stairs? Are you going to go quick? Are you going to go slow? Connect the brain.
3,
See how the body
2,
works. That's what
1.
we want.
Step up overhead press.
Good. Anytime we get into balance work, that is absolutely fantastic. Balance, fall prevention training could be one of the top things that we actually need to work, especially as we're getting older. That's where majority of breaks, hospitalizations are coming from, is actually just falls. Simple things like trying to step in and out of the bathtub. Even if, so most showers at home have a lip. It's so often that happens. You just catch a toe trying to step in and you didn't realize how much difference
3,
there was in the
2,
floor.
1. Transition to tricep press down step back lunge.
So we're trying to work with our bodies to prevent all sorts of things from happening. And actually, the reason why I love Core Day is because I
3,
think everybody
2,
should be trying to
1. Tricep press down step back lunge.
actually trying to be getting up and down off the floor every single day, right? The more we do it, the better our body gets at it. Marcia, you remember that when you first started? I mean, can I share it? Can I share it publicly? The first time Marcia came in, I was like, okay, we're going to get on the floor. Well, I'm not getting back up. You know, I hear it all the time. And yeah, the first time we do that, after years and years and years of not getting onto the floor, when we go to stand up then, it can take, I think I kind of timed Marcia, and we were at like 23, 24 seconds to try to get off the floor. After it could have only been,
3,
I think it was only
2,
like 2 or 3 weeks.
1.
And we were down to like
Transition
11
to hamstring
seconds,
curl pull
right?
apart.
Able to just roll over, settle in, get set. And then by the time we got really going and she was able to get up between rounds, especially
3,
for like these hamstring
2,
curls,
1. Hamstring curl pull apart.
we were getting up in 5-6 seconds. You know, so the more we challenge our body through those positions, the better we do. And getting off the floor, that is something that is so imperative to movement because our knees bend more, our hips bend more. We have to stabilize and balance through the whole process. We have to figure out, how do I use my core to get there?
That's halfway.
So, you know,
Let's don't get on the floor behind the chair.
just don't get on the floor behind a chair.
That's a little challenge.
But you made it out, Marcia.
Yeah.
It is fun. It's interesting for me because, you know, you think about that position you were in and feeling
3,
stuck,
2,
you know,
1. Long
4
rest.
years ago. Think about the position you would have been in. I mean, that would have been, I need to make a phone call to get help just so I can stand up. So prevention training, people, that's what it's all about here. All right, long rest. Guess what? Only one more round to go. So I want you to do your absolute best through it, okay? Pick what works for you. Do you want to be going fast? Do you want to be going slow? Do you want to be increasing the amount of resistance? That's the way we want to make this work, okay? So again, do your absolute best. Always let me know if you have any questions. I'll help you out and get you taken care of, okay?
3, 2, 1. Get ready for row squats.
Okay. Back to the first one, row squats. Get set and ready to go.
3, 2, 1. Row squats.
Very good. Again, stay tall. Okay, so even the shoulders and the head, I want to pull those up. Okay, so I'm really thinking the back of the head is being pulled up to the ceiling. Right? So I'm not coming up here, chin to ceiling. I want to think the back of the
That's
head
halfway.
up to the ceiling. That cowlick, that's kind of the perfect
I got
spot,
a
right?
beautiful one.
That cowlick right here is being pulled right up to the ceiling. Oh, I'm going to have an alfalfa all day now, probably. Okay, good. Shoulders, pull them down and back hard. Core compress. Squeeze your butt cheeks together.
2,
Firm, firm, firm.
1. Transition to chest press lunge.
Awesome. Good. Go ahead and rotate around. Chest press lunge. I want you to do your absolute best through that chest press lunge. Core compress, shoulders down and
3,
back.
2, 1.
Good, firm squeezes.
Chest press lunge.
Remember, stay nice and tall. Shoulder blades go down and back all the way. Right? Reach for the floor. Compress that core. You should feel still, even with those arms going forward, you should
That's
still
halfway.
feel your lats holding your shoulder into place. If I go to push and I'm really rounded, and that shoulder's pulled forward, that's bad. I want to take and pull that shoulder back so I have a nice solid base to create my push on. Okay? Good, good, good. Work through it. Do your
2,
best.
1. Transition to hammer curl. Good mornings.
That is what I love to see. Hard work, being accomplished. And then my daughter says, no, Dad.
3, 2, 1. Hammer curl. Good mornings.
Good, here we go. Hammer curl, good mornings. Remember, do your absolute best to get the butt to travel backwards. We call this a hip hinge because it's like a hinging of a door, right? Nothing in the door moves except for that one point. It's a pivot. So we want to pivot on the hips, right? So that's the whole point of core compression. If I compress my core really
That's
solid,
halfway.
I can't bend at the waist, right? So in this position, I should be really tight. Squeeze up, right? So the whole time, that's what we're trying to get. Then squeeze your biceps really firm. Good core compression all the way through. To me, this one's the crock pot out of the bottom cupboard.
3, 2, 1. Transition to step up overhead press.
Awesome. Okay, step up overhead press. Again, do your absolute best. Try to work through it. Challenge yourself. Make sure it is a challenge, whether it's a challenge
3,
in speed, a challenge in
2,
focus, a challenge
1.
in
Step up overhead press.
just your core training, right? Whatever the challenge is, make sure you are working that challenge because that's the only way you will actually see change. So compress that core harder. Pull those shoulder blades down and back even farther, right? Press through that leg, nice and tight through the leg, butt cheek tight.
That's halfway.
Good, good, good.
Get another can.
Awesome. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Nice and tight. Again, do your absolute best all the way through.
3,
Very good
2,
work, Marcia.
1. Transition
love
to
it.
tricep press down step back lunge.
Way to go. Good. Tricep press down, step back lunge. We're almost there. Do your best through. Anything it takes. Do what it takes.
3, 2, 1. Tricep press down step back lunge.
Okay? If it is hard, if it is difficult, that's okay. Right? Do your best with the range of motion that you have. If you have sore knees, if you have sore shoulders, that's okay. We want to work through what we have. When we build stability in the shoulders, the
That's
core, and the
halfway.
glutes, everything else begins to change. Your mobility increases. Joint pain starts to decrease. This is the main thing that we want to work towards. Building strength in the stabilizers, even if it's through a compound movement. Butt, belly, bra strap. Get them tight.
3, 2, 1. Transition to hamstring curl pull aparts.
Very good. Last one. Here we go. Do your absolute best, getting nice and tall, shoulders down and back. Bend those knees, pulling those
3,
heels to the butt.
2, 1. Hamstring curl pull aparts.
Here we go. Good hamstring pulls. Pull those heels back, 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 all the way towards your butt as hard as you possibly can. Okay. Shoulder blades down and back. Do your best through that. Squeeze tight, tight, tight. Get
That's
your
halfway.
best. Your best. Okay. Do it again. Re-squeeze. Butt, belly, bra strap. Right? So think about it. Squeeze the penny between the cheeks. Compress that core like you're getting punched. Shoulders trying to unclip your bra strap.
3, 2,
Good.
1. Way to be rock stars.
Awesome. Well, isn't that just fantastic? Very, very good work. Proud of you. I believe in you guys doing great work through this. So if you enjoyed the workout, please give it a thumbs up so that way I know we're getting exactly what we need out of it. If you struggled with the workout, I don't even care if you give me a thumbs down, but I do want to know what happened, what made it difficult. I would love to be able to put together certain videos that can explain things in a little more in-depth detail for you in order to get the most out of the training that we need. Have an absolutely fantastic weekend. I hope things go well for you. Get out and enjoy the outdoors. Have fun. Go smile at someone. It's amazing to me how much just smiling at someone can be impactful and powerful for the day, right? I would love it if Better Body Movement wasn't just about creating better bodies, but better smiles. Go out and affect someone's day with that smile. Enjoy your weekend. I will see you guys again on Monday for our core day, so please join in for that. As always, I am here to help you move well so you live well.
Carpal tunnel syndrome commonly is caused by forearm muscles that get overly tight and create compression on your carpals. We will start by working through the extensor digitorum, the extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis, and extensor carpi ulnaris. Start with a lacrosse ball on the upper part of the forearm. You'll notice when you make a fist and squeeze the knuckles up, the muscles will tighten in the upper part of the forearm near the elbow. Press down with the lacrosse ball and flex the wrist. Release the pressure on the lacrosse ball, returning the wrist to extension or knuckles up. Repeat this process multiple times over the top side of the forearm in the extensors of the wrist. Do this at a brisk pace. An additional way to work this muscle tissue is by using your own forearm. Locate the flexors of the wrist by squeezing the knuckles up. Lay your arm across your knees and press your elbow into the tissue. Repeat, knuckles up, pressure on, knuckles down, pressure off. Continue this process through the muscle on the top of the forearm. The next group of muscle tissue that creates more pressure on the carpals as well is on the inside of the forearm. These are called the flexor carpi radialis and ulnaris and palmaris longus. Using a technique like the extensors, start with an open palm flexing your fingers towards the elbow as far as you can. After you put pressure down on the muscle tissue, using your opposite elbow, open your hand pointing your fingers to the floor as far as you possibly can. Lift the pressure, flex the wrist, bringing the fingers to the starting position. Continue this process for roughly 30 seconds in multiple spots, working briskly. The next area to focus on is the retinaculum. This is a ligamentous band around the wrist that keeps the tendons close to the bone. Oftentimes, the tendons underneath the retinaculum get adhered and make it very painful within the carpals themselves. Focusing on the retinaculum, glide the thumb up and down the entire band, spanning from the mid-wrist all the way into the base of the hand. Work vigorously with firm pressure for 30 seconds in order to break adhesions that lie deep within the carpals. Now it's time to perform a joint mobilization. You can see there are several bones that make up the carpal area of the wrist. We want to simply restore some range of motion to the carpals. Using your opposite hand, create a tight squeeze around the wrist and drag the hand away from the elbow as you hold the wrist. Begin to rotate the wrist in a big circle. Continue mobilizing the wrist for 30 seconds. Now we're going to create a stretch that's going to help the nerves communicate with the wrist. Sitting in a chair, press the shoulder down towards the floor. Rotate the thumb and wrist backwards, then flex the wrist and fingers up to the ceiling. Create a neural glide by looking down and away from that arm. Continue to perform this stretch 30 to 60 seconds. To begin working the muscles that are most affected by dequervans, hold your hand with your thumb straight up in the air. Then locate the tendon that is most superficial or on top of the wrist. This tendon will be controlled by a muscle that runs up the arm towards the elbow. I want you to contract the muscle tissue by flexing your wrist up and down while you press into the muscle tissue with your thumb. If this is too difficult, to use your thumb, grab a lacrosse ball and place pressure directly onto the forearm using the palm of your hand. Remember to create this contraction 7 to 10 times, pressing straight into the muscle tissue near the elbow. Next, we are going to run pressure from the wrist up the forearm towards the elbow, creating a firm pressure, driving up and stretching the tissue. Again, we can use the lacrosse ball and just roll up the arm, creating a release of that tissue.
It's going to be really interesting to see
See it all.